am going to do a live stream now. Sorry about all the tech problems. If you're watching this now, the recorded version, you don't know, but I've had to do this live like 6 times because things keep going wrong or stuff, so like that. So yeah, I actually going live now. I'm going to be, hopefully we'll get to reading What Once Was Mine, who knows, but I'm just gonna like catch you guys up on some things because I haven't gone live in a really long time. I know I didn't give you guys any like update like I normally do, but I just wanted to do it for fun and just like, so if no one comes, no one comes, but yeah, let's just see. Okay, so books I have been reading. I just finished Ms. Marvel, No Normal. You will be getting a review for this comic book soon. I'm almost done with Ms. Marvel Generation Y. I have like one more section left of that one, and I really am liking those books. I'm reading Shadow and Bone, which I don't like very much. I don't like this book very much. I have heard really great things about the show, so I decided to read it. I heard mixed opinions on the book, but it's not my favorite right now. I'm 82 pages in. So I'm tempted just to like leave it, but I also really want to watch the show. So I don't really know. So if people ever pop on here, I will ask them if they've read Shadow and Bone and their thoughts on it, and if I should continue because it's not something I really know a whole lot about. And I thought I would like it from like the overall synopsis of it, but I'm not really enjoying it right now. I really want to read Magnus Chase soon, so who knows? Hopefully I get to reading Magnus Chase, because that would be absolutely amazing, because Magnus Chase, I love that series so much, so hopefully, but who knows. So because no one's on here right now, I think I might just go in and read some for today. So I am of What Once Was Mine because I haven't read this book in a really, really long time, and I have been wanting to. So now you're gonna see my camera set up. There's that. Well, thanks for just like popping on here, even if no one comes. If you just come at all, make sure to say hi, and yeah, and if you're watching a recorded version of it, please let me know your thoughts on Shadow and Bone, because I'm really curious to see if it gets better, if it's just really not a very good book with a good adaptation, or what it is about, because I've heard really good things, and I've heard really bad things about the book series, so I thought I would pick it up. Maybe it'd be for me, but right now it's just kind of, it's mostly just kind of boring, like nothing really is happening, and she's just like, the Darkling is dark and mysterious, and I don't really care that much. I don't care. The only dark character that I have ever liked is Nico D'Angelo from the Percy Jackson series, which I actually have the Sea of Monsters right here. Like, it's really beat up because I've read it so many times, but what are people's thoughts on the casting of Percy Jackson? Also let me know that in the comments, because I love it. I know a lot of people have a problem with it, with the different ethnicities of the characters, and although yeah, it would be great to have those characters that look like the people that I envisioned, it's not a reason that I'm gonna hate on the casting. I don't really care that much, so I don't have a problem with it. The fact that Annabeth isn't white does not bother me very much. As long as she pulls off her personality, which I really think she can do. She's not really been in anything too big. But so I haven't been able to check their stuff out like I have with Walker, with Autumn Project. But I think Rick knows what he's doing, and I'm gonna trust his process. So that's my thoughts on that, because I know a lot of people don't like Annabeth's casting because she's not white and blonde, which, yeah, that's how they described her in the books, but I don't have a problem with it, really. It's not something I'm losing my sleep about. I don't really care that much, as long as she does a good job with the character. So, I would like to know other people's thoughts, because I feel like a lot of people are angry about it and I don't really understand. But yeah, What Once Was Mine is right here, so let's just go on reading it. If you want to read along, I am at chapter Rapunzel, and in my copy of the book, it is page 120. The moment her mother was gone, she began to pack. "Isn't this exciting, Pascal?" The lizard didn't answer. He tolerated her movements only because he was slung around the back of her neck like a handkerchief. Like a kerchief. That's kind of a weird way of visualizing that, but okay. It was warm and soft there. He was full from tasty egg dinner, and nothing was obviously going to kill or eat him in the next few minutes. Kind of weird, but okay. As far as the lizard was concerned, all was good in the world, if a little nausea-inducing. This is a weird way of explaining this. Rapunzel pulled off all her maps of Europe, which she had exactly 3, each at least 50 years out of date. Barney's had been won, lost, and stolen loyalties, and boundaries switched around as if by magic. One of the maps had already been carefully rubbed out of free inking in several places, but the land masses never changed. The mountains, rivers, lakes, and oceans. Rapunzel had a fairly good idea what direction the floating lights were in. Okay, so talking about these floating lights, I've actually seen a thing like this. It's called the Lantern Fest. It's now illegal where I live, because lanterns are illegal because they start fires where I live. But it was thousands of people were lighting off lanterns, and it was so cool. It really did give you the feel of the Tangled movie, and they were playing Tangled music, and it was so cool. And I really wish lanterns weren't illegal, because it really is such a big memory to me. It's just stuck out so much in my head. It's super duper cool. If you ever get a time that you can do that, I would highly recommend it, because it's awesome. But not how large or how far away they actually were. She hoped they weren't out over the sea. On the other hand, the idea of a giant Andalusian whale coming up from the depths of some unknown seasonal instinct to release golden glowing bubbles and blow into the air, well, that would be quite a thing to see too. Wincing, she carefully tore maps number 1 and number 3 out of their books and rolled them carefully and stuck them into the satchel with the crown, which she stuck in a larger cloth bag than she usually used to keep bread. Along with maps, she also put the food that would last the end of some crusty loaves, roasting the dry beans, cheese, eggs that had been boiled. Since she didn't have a water skin like heroes had in stories, she had to make do with a clay jar in the water, whose lid she sealed on the wax so it wouldn't spill. She carefully rolled up the wanted poster and slid it in the corner, along the seam where it hopefully wouldn't get too crumpled. After some thought, she also threw a quill, a tablet of ink, and 4 dabs of paint-dried pellets made out of shells, which her mother had found at her last trip to get the white pigment. Who knew? Maybe she would be inspired to paint something truly amazing she saw outside. A few little treasures, including some real coins and fake ones, she had painted up for a puppet show. Her rope seemed handy, but she had her hair, a small knife, a bit of hard leather for sharpening, and several large cloths she had used as cloaks, or she wiped one around her head dramatically to hide her giant pile of hair. Then she saw herself in the mirror. She was ridiculous. It looked like she was hiding a second smaller Rapunzel on top of her head, crouched down, covering herself with a blanket. Rapunzel sighed and undid it, until she found Flynn, probably after as well. She would have to be very, very careful. She fastened her braid around the armoire again, got up the windowsill and breathed behind her neck to touch Pascal for good luck. Then she looked back into the room she was leaving. It seemed so small and dark and cheerful, filled with everything that made Rapunzel: paintings and mobiles, insects and sticks and crafts and weaving of plants, and a blank mirror which now reflected only the things in the room, not the person who lived there. Rapunzel felt strange, like she was a spirit departing an old body. It was the kind of body that done its job, but now it was too little and too cramped to hold her in all her dreams. A note. She should leave a note. But what would she say? "Dear mother, I've gone to find the floating lights. I'll be back." Of course, there was no obvious sign of struggle, so it would be immediately obvious that she had left her own accord, and Gothel would know that where she was headed. So was there any point in leaving a note at all? So she jumped, whee, and whispered, spinning around and around until she felt like a spider enjoying her descent. "Ha ha," she squealed, yanking her hair free. She was done for a few minutes of serious twirling around the grass. She checked on the tree of a hole in it. As far as she could tell, with her extremely limited experience, none, there had not seemed to be any tracks or signs of anyone else trying to find the crown. The only footprint she saw, which at first was very exciting, turned out to be her own dainty foot. As eager as she was to begin her adventure, a hidden valley around her looked a little dark, forbidden, full of rocks, trees, and shadows, and hopefully also empty. "Mother comes and goes a lot, so there must be a path," she said aloud. And if she, on the poster on the tree, it would be the path used by many people. It would be wide and easily seen. She walked around the base of the tower, keeping up a finger on it for fun, for comfort, and thus immediately discovering two things. One, there was indeed a path, a narrow one, that led through the cleft between the two natural rock walls, overhung and hidden by ivy, easily missed if you didn't know what you were looking for. Two, there was a door in the base of the tower. A door? Rapunzel demanded in surprise and outrage. It wasn't much of a door, honestly. More of a sort cabinet behind which you might put refuse on things you didn't need very often, but still, her tower had a door, and she didn't even know about it. On it were all sorts of angry-looking signs. Keep out, plague, mendicants and pox victims here, do not enter. This was confusing enough, but along with the signs shoved in the gap between the door that jabbed was a coat. The coat of a young man, Flynn had been wearing, and then happened not to be wearing. Rapunzel frowned at the mystery and tried opening the door. It was locked, of course. Rapunzel's frown deepened. Was Flynn trying to use his jacket to somehow open the locked door? If so, maybe he wasn't the sort of clever adventurer she needed. Or, wait, was he actually super, super clever? What if he was being pursed by the king and queen whose crown he's stolen? Picked a lock of the door, took off his jacket, and shoved it into the doorway to make it look like he had somehow gone inside, and let his coat be caught in haste. How many people would follow a man in a tower that had plague warnings all over it? Even if they stood there trying to figure out what to do, Flynn would have bought himself precious extra minutes to escape. No, Rapunzel thought smugly. She was right to choose Flynn as her guide. This was precisely the sort of survival-minded, sneaky fellow she required. Not that she had much of a choice with the whole guide business. She left the coat where it was, after snaking an arm into one of the sleeves, to see how it fit her, out of curiosity, and headed down to the path. She did wonder about the door, however. The tower was too narrow to expect a scared stairs, and anyway, there was a way. Why did Gothel insist on using her hair? Laziness? Or was there some other reason? Like not wanting Rapunzel to know there was an easy entrance or exit to her tower. Of course, Gothel had managed to get her up there somehow when Rapunzel was younger and her hair was shorter, but she couldn't quite remember how, and she never questioned it. The whole thing. Hi. Hi. I'm reading What Once Was Mine. Sorry, I didn't realize you guys were there. It is the story of Rapunzel. It is a twisted tale. So if you like the movie Tangled, you would probably like this book. If you know, like, just pretty basic knowledge of Tangled, you should be able to follow through. But it is the story of what if Rapunzel's mother drank a potion from the wrong flower. So if you've seen Tangled the series, that'll also help a lot. And if you want just some background knowledge, I have recorded all the lives of me reading this book, so you can go ahead and check them out. Oh, awesome. I'm glad you love Tangled. Yeah, so if you want, you can go and check them out after this live, so that you can follow along with me reading. If you happen to have What Once Was Mine, just out of coincidence, we're on page 126, so you can follow along if you would like. But yeah, happy to see you here. Okay, let's get started with this style again. Okay, there it is. There's where we are. Awesome! Her ruminations didn't last too long, however. Soon she was pushing aside the curtains of ivy, passing through the cleft, and stepping out to the forest proper. It wasn't as dark as it had looked from above. In fact, it opened up to a trail as big as a road. She assumed never actually having seen a road. Strange, straight marks deep in the softer dirt were probably made by wheels from a cart or wagon. On either side of the trail, moss and pretty little flowers mounded around giant, squat trees with large leaves and friendly faces in the patterns of their bark. Light broke through the canopy of the forest in glittery patches, and tiny songbirds called, dancing in the branches. A small furry creature Rapunzel was pretty sure was a moose, like the one that had gotten caught in her tower, regarded her from the branch, the little feral black eyes. "Hello," Rapunzel cried happily. The thing let loose the high-pitched ring, which sounded like swear words, and took off, its bushy tail shaking. Pascal's feet dug into his mistress's neck. Moose were herbivores, of course. Squirrels, on the other hand, were opportunists and would not turn down a helpless fledgling of or injured lizard. "And you too," she called, curtsying. "All right. I can't be certain which way Flynn Rider went, so I'll just take the direction that leads sort of in the direction of the floating lights. If we see someone, Pascal, we'll ask." The day was young and the sky above the trees was blue. She almost skipped and wished she could let her hair trail out behind her, and desperately wanted glorious, free and silver, but just in case, she kept it tied up. There were so many things to see and touch and talk to. She could have spent a lifetime on the first mile, who had spent nearly 20 years in 2 rooms. Okay, so I'll explain that for you, just in case you've never read this book. If you've watched Tangled the series, then you would know there's the sun drop and then the moonstone, but they make it into a flower in this book, so it's the moonflower. And Rapunzel's mom has the moonflower, which causes her to have silver hair, and every single time someone touches her hair, they die. Which is why Gothel thinks that she should be in the tower, so that she doesn't kill anyone, because Gothel told her that she killed her mother when she was a baby, even though that's of course not true. So yeah, that's just a little context to it. If you never read this book, you probably didn't understand that paragraph, so I thought I'd give you context to it. Hopefully that makes sense now. Okay, trees, for instance, were all different. When you got up close, their painter in her was appalled of how thoughtlessly she had copied onto her walls what she thought was a good imitation of life. In reality, they had differently shaped leaves, different shades of brown bark, and gray and black, and even silver and white bark, differently gnarled roots, and patterns of branches. Also intriguing were the plants that were neither tree nor grass. She knew logically that they were bushes, but kept staring at them up close, wondering if they would have preferred to be trees or grass, these strange in-between things. One was a wild rose. She recognized that from her books. But no picture could have prepared her for the heady scent of the envelope. She had blossoms caught in a ray of warmth and sunlight. There were more insects than her mind could properly wrap itself around. "Oh, look, Pascal," she cried, spying something that didn't look like the rest of the forest. A regular shape in stark shades stood out against the fuzzy and organic background. It was another wanted poster. Wanted, Flynn Rider, dead or alive. To be clear, dead is perfectly acceptable. We must be on the right track if they're looking for him here too, she said happily, tearing the poster down. Then she frowned, regarding it. This one has a different drawing of his face. Look. Here, his nose is even bigger. She carefully rolled up the poster and put it into her bag next to the first one. There were recognizable tracks of the ground here, a fresher. Maybe were large and deep like the shoe and boot-wearing woman had made them. Or men, Rapunzel realized. Honestly, except for herself and her mother, she had no basis of comparison. The land slowly began to change as she walked. Clearing became small meadows, and path grew flatter and more densely packed. And she got to her first real look at any human structure besides her own tower, a rickety wooden fence that bordered a road, intersecting with her own. Above the first post, swinging her chains, was carved and painted sign of a beautiful golden duck. The snuggling duckling. I was so excited to see how they do this. Let's see. Okay, cool. Rapunzel read breathlessly. It was a more or less what she herself would name an establishment given the choice. This was probably a tavern or a public house or inn, something of weary travelers to stop in, like in the fairy tales. Certainly a patron there could help her find Flynn. She straightened her dress and her kerchief that hid some of her hair, and followed the trail to the friendly-looking building. It was so old that the giant tree had grown partially into it and draped over the roof like a protective arm. The original structure had obviously been added on the haphazardly as space and time and tree permitted. Several large animals were tied outside. "Horses!" Rapunzel cried, recognizing the fairy tale creatures at once. She threw up her arms open and was about to hug one mightily around its beautiful chestnut neck, but stopped herself for in the last moment. "No, Rapunzel, you're on a mission," she told herself sternly. "Go in and ask about Flynn. Floating lights first, hugging horses later." And firmly resolved, she drew herself up into what she supposed a dignified and respectable pose and approached the duckling. Any reluctance she had to enter an unknown situation ended in the moment she drew close. It sounded like the most magical place in the world. There was loud sounds telling unintelligible stories and merry clank of an instrument. Some people singing one song, others another peals of heavy laughter. Without even thinking about a life she had been denied, Rapunzel threw open the doors with expectation, and at the end, all immediately became silent. Her eyes grew even larger as she shook in the scene that comforted her. It was not at all like she had imagined. A giant room was dark, chaotic, and filled with enormous men in dark clothes. These men gaped at her, scar-faced, pop-eyed, bald, hairy, bearded, beardless, muscled, weaponed. She was the only one of color in the entire place. Her lavender dress, framed by the brightened outdoor light that bent the raid around her figure. From the looks of it, she might have been the only colorful thing that had ever been inside the Snuggly Duckling, despite the shiny yellow duckling sign. Some of the patrons seemed to actually wince at the garishness of her outfit. Or maybe it was her hair. Rapunzel swallowed briefly, some scrubbing of the wash of different emotions. Fear, certainty, stage fright, definitely, but most guilty and embarrassment. She hadn't wanted their gay singing and laughter to stop, and certainly didn't want to be the cause of it stopping. Had she done something wrong? Was it private property? Was the Snuggly Duckling a name of a family? Was this men-only establishment? No. She could see a couple dangerous-looking women in the mix, and several serving drinks. "What a nice lass like you doing in a place like this?" one of the men asked. He had a nasty smile and wore a metal cap with horns that curved around. Sorry, I lost my place. I just got a notification of something I don't even really know. Oh, here it is. He had a nasty smile. Yeah, its points were sharpened and looked more like fangs that something that would grow on a cow or a sheep or a camel. Rapunzel had no idea what kind of horns they were. Only the large, cuddly animals had worn them. She flicked a fingernail along the evil-looking blade, slicing off moon-shaped bits of nail. "All alone?" another man asked. This one was a huge nose and had a hand on his sword. "In a fancy dress," one of the women said pointedly. "With a pouch full of gold coins, no doubt." "I wouldn't touch her." This was said by some finality by the scariest member in the crowd, a man with a broad blade plate and a hook on his left hand. He turned his back to Rapunzel, very obviously sipping his beer, ending any potential interaction. "She's a lady or a noble. Nothing but trouble. Even if you try to return her to her parents for a reward, they'll just soon gut an honest thug pay." "I'm what he deserves," the crowd. Thugs, ruffians. Rapunzel could put words to them now that someone else had suggested it. Began to mutter sounds of reluctant agreement, disappointing noises and grunts. They all turned their backs on her, resumed their previous drinking and activities and discussions. "Wait, I am not a lost lady." That sounded a little strange, but she decided not to just press on. "I'm not looking for help or my parents or anything. I'm looking for him." And with that, she dramatically pulled out the poster of Flynn, unfurling it with a snap of her wrist. She waited for the appropriate reaction. Everybody in the Snuggly Duckling began laughing at her all at once. Flynn Rider one of the women hooted, cackling. "You're looking for Flynn Rider? You and the Stabbingtons." The man with the big nose cried, panting from his hysterics. "You and the king and queen." A man whose muffled voice echoed from underneath the metal helm said he was giggling. "You and everyone in the kingdom who wants the reward." The man with the horns roared. Rapunzel looked at them, and then at her poster. A single silver hair had loosened itself from the knot braid, or had been burnt into. She shoved it back immediately and forcefully, not out of the usual irritation that came the stray tendril, but a fear that came from the lifetime of worry about accidentally killing things with it. "I'm not looking for a reward," she explained carefully. "I want to hire him for a job." "No, you don't," the man with a hook for a hand said, almost kindly, but still without turning his back around. "You really don't want to. Free prices of advance, miss. Go on back home, or whatever you came from. Please wait." But the chatter and discussion she had been so sorry to interrupt before started up again, with no regard for her presence or predicament. This was a very strange moment for a girl who had spent her 19 years in a tower by herself, with only one other person to talk to. There had been forgotten and ignored by indifferent worlds cut off by the walls around her. But there she had never been actively ignored by anything. Okay, maybe Gothel a little, but much less of a crowd of strangers. Excuse me?" she said, waving her hand, trying to get their attention again. "Hello, I need help." Her eyes quick saw coins being pushed around the far cloth pouch of silver and gold, changing hands. She thought about the repeated mentions of rewards, both of the ones on the poster for Flynn Rider's capture and the one for the thugs assumed would be offered for her return to her parents. Apparently, to get anything done in this outside world, or the Snuggly Duckling at least, you needed money. "Listen, I can pay. I'll pay someone to take me to him. I have let's see." She dug up around at the bottom of her bag a couple of 6-sided coins, a coin that with a hole in it and a slice of wood my mother brought me that kind of looks like a coin. I painted a face on it. Ooh. Here's a little dragon I carved. "Go away," the man with the hook said, waving his hook backward at her like a pesky fly. "No one wants your trash. I'll take you to Flynn." The words rang out heroically over the rabble. Rapunzel was momentarily dazzled by one of the thugs, muscled and calmly striking a heroic pose at the top of the table, chin out, ivory teeth sparkling, hands on hips. The rest of the thugs rolled their eyes on this, continued talking. "Okay, yes, thank you. Finally, yes," Rapunzel said, trying not to jump up and down with excitement. Which coins will you do it for? If you please. First tell me, what do you need Flynn for?" The girl leapt down from the table. Her dark hair hung in a single braid down her back and wrapped at the end of the leather. She was even shorter than Rapunzel. "I need a sneaky thief to lead me on a valiant quest." "I can sneak," the girl said, slamming her gloved fists around the table in a display that was far less suitable or subtle than she might have wanted. What's she got that I don't? A poster advertising his famous exploits? Rapunzel ventured, holding it up as evidence. The girl crossed her arms and looked. You got me there. I'm just starting out, though. He's been at this thuggery business for a while. All right, I'll do it. I'll take you to him. It'll look good on my resume. Beef it up a little for future jobs. Rapunzel tried to interrupt, but it was like it had been decided that the girl was doing her a favor. The name's Gina. She stuck out her hand. Rapunzel stared at it, unsure what to do. I'm Rapunzel. Weird name. Okay, Gina said. Buy me a drink so we can discuss details. Rapunzel wasn't sure what she meant by details. She had said that she wanted to be taken to Flynn Rider. What else was there to say? By the idea of sliding up to the bar and ordering something like a real adult human was entrancing. The two girls pushed their way through. Wow, I really like your art painting, Rapunzel said to the man in the metal helmet as they squeezed by him. The picture was a cupcake with what looked like a wisp of a spoon crossed in the front of it. I love making cupcakes on rainy days when I'm feeling down. Of course, she couldn't see the expression on his face as he turned to watch her go. It was really very hard to hear him whisper over the background noise. She knows. Probably someone who gets it. Okay, so that was one chapter. I don't really know if I'm trying to see how long. Okay, I'm gonna read one more chapter. Cause yeah, it's not been quite an hour. Hi to the one person that's here. I don't know if it's the same person or who it is, but hi. Okay, this one is called Rapunzel and Gina. While we might think that year after year of talking only to herself and inanimate objects, and the occasional would-be abrupt pet would make Rapunzel mad with a desire to communicate all the things that had been building in her skull in the last 19 years. Well, you would be right. But on the other hand, everything Gina said was literally new information for her. Rapunzel was fascinated. Flynn's been working at the Stabbingtons their season. Dumb of them. If you ask anyone, of course. You can trust Flynn about as far as you can throw him. But the Stabbingtons are dumb as a box. Caltrops. They're good for pounding things and people. Mostly people into dust. No skits at all. Okay, cool. This is so funny. I love this section. Gina might be my favorite character now. No skills at all in sneaking or talking their way into anywhere. That's why they needed a team up with a thief like Flynn. Rumor has it they had the biggest heist. Something at the castle. It's why all the wanted posters were up everywhere. He's been helping them loot the royal treasury, one treasure at a time. I don't know much about this sort of thing, Rapunzel admitted, thinking about her crown, so this was its origin story. But the name Stabbington sounds like someone you might not want to deal with. Oh, big time no. Even Hookhand here won't cross him, Gina agreed, gesturing at the man. But rumor is that Flynn did. Double-crossed him. I mean, he took the treasure and took off. The Stabbingtons are after him. We find the Stabbingtons, they find Flynn. We get to Flynn before their daggers do. Easy peasy. Meddler squeeze. You sound like you've been thuggin' for a long time, Rapunzel said with admiration. Actually, you're my first paying gig, Gina admitted. You're too young, they say. You're a girl, they say. How am I supposed to get a job experience if no one will let me in on the job? Literally, the only thing I wanted to do with my entire life, and it's a boys' club. You wanted to be the villain your whole life? Rapunzel suddenly wondered if that was a polite thing to ask. Not villain, adventurer, Gina said. Not taking offense, living by the speed of my mind at the edge of my blade. I was always running away from adventure, even back in the orphanage. Oh man, she laughed, slapping her thigh at the memories. I was always diving out of the window, tiptoeing on the railroad. Yeah, that place was the worst, but definitely honed my sneaking skills early on. Now, you know what I mean. Absolutely, Rapunzel said, wishing it were true. And you grew up there, at the orphanage? Nah, I was adopted. My mom, a nice lady, an old good wife, lives in the forest. She doesn't do well around other people. Not an adventurer. A hermit. Okay, I don't know if you've ever watched Tangled the series, but Gina really reminds me of Cassandra, and I can't get it out of my head. Okay, a hermit, Rapunzel said in amazement. He wondered if there was a tower involved. I'm adopted too, but I didn't come from an orphanage. Yeah, looks like your adopted family has a bit more money than mine, Gina observed with amusement, looking over Rapunzel's dress. After they finished their drinks, Gina made Rapunzel get a calves. She could tell the other girl wasn't used to pub life. Well, you should watch Tangled the series. It's a really good show. It's one of my favorites. It's on Disney Plus if you have Disney Plus. I really like it. The thug grabbed her sack and a few more weapons, and they had set down the Twilight Road. Her plan was to search all the spots where the Stabbingtons were known to hang out, find them, follow them, and thus find Flynn. The first hideout was a small cave, dark but dry, by broken aisle, jugs, and rotten bits of leather in the corners. This was very satisfying for Rapunzel. It looked just like she'd imagined the ruffians' camp would be, down in the candle nubs to the ground. The second place they searched was a decaying woodsman. Oh, cool. Yeah. The second place they searched was a decaying woodsman, shacked deep in the forest, spooky and filled with spider webs. Neither Gina nor the brave as brave as Valkyrie. I love Thor Ragnarok, and now whenever I hear Valkyrie, I just think of that movie. Nor Rapunzel, innocent to the world, hesitated in barging in. The third was a colorful, noisy inn at the edge of the forest, full of music and shouting. Gina would not let Rapunzel go into the cheerful place. To her surprise and intense disappointment, "I think you're some sort of lady," Gina explained. "What?"
Good night, Booey.
Good night. And really, it was not fit for a lady. "What about the snuggly duckling? I went there just fine," Rapunzel demanded. "This place is even less lady appropriate," was all Gina would say. By the time night truly fell, they had seen neither hide nor hair of their brothers, only heard rumors of their whereabouts. Rapunzel was urged to continue their search, but her body was falling apart. She had never walked so much in her life, not even during the cross-country trek on Games Day, or the 3 years before, when she was pretty sure she had walked half a marathon back and forth from her bedroom to the stove. At least there was a goal of the race, and she had done the calculations twice. "I think we'd better bed down for the night," Gina said, as Rapunzel walked into the tree for the 3rd time. "I'm fine," Rapunzel protested warily. "We'll keep going. Don't villains do their villaining at night easier to find?" "Yeah, but even villains sleep, even your famous Flynn Rider," Gina said cheerfully. "Here, this looks like a nice spot. Come on, you make a fire, and I'll go get us some game hens and something for dinner." Rapunzel was immediately fully awake. "I'm not going to kill them," she shrieked. "Oh no," the other girl said slowly. She frowned at Rapunzel and held her leather sling. "The stone missiles are going to kill them. If I do my job right." "What's the matter with you? My mother would bring me chickens, and it was my job to kill them, and I hated it." Rapunzel shivered and wrapped her silvery hair tightly around her shoulders. Gina stared at her for a moment, obviously trying to process this. Was she trying to teach you to be a good farmer? Like the whole circle of life thing? Know where your food comes from, treat it with respect. If you can't look your meat in the eye, then you should stick to carrots. Rapunzel almost giggled, and she wasn't sure why. She knew nothing about farming, to save what she read in book number 34, The Farmer's Book of Days, and that Gothel generally looked down at it as an occupation. But now that she thought about it, what kind of person brought live animals on long trips to be killed by a young girl at the end of it? Why not wring their necks at home and then pack them quiet and unmoving? Why would Gothel do that? Because she wanted to teach another kind lesson, not about the circle of life. "Rapunzel, you're a killer." Or, "Rapunzel, see what I can make you do." How come Rapunzel had never just said no? She shivered again and looked down at the fire. "I don't think so." "Huh. Okay. Well, guess I'll just be back in a few. Alright?" Gina stepped away from her campsite, keeping the close eye on another girl. Less like she was afraid of her first professional job would sneak off into the night, and more like she had a chance she would do something potentially destructive. Rapunzel pretended not to notice. She made a fire, which would have been fun if she hadn't been so tired, unlike the close resource loop of her tower, where she had only what logs were brought to burn. Here she could gather as much as she wanted. They weren't cut neatly, but that was all right. Once it was burning neatly, she looked up at the stars directly overhead. That was new. Never in her life had she been able to just look up and see anything besides the mobiles. She had herself to inmate in the real stars of the planet. Now there was nothing between her and the heavens. She felt the world spin and flung her arms out, digging her fingers firmly into the dirt to steady herself. A warm breeze blew, and for one crazy moment she felt like a bird diving into infinity, into the air that was warm breath and celestial spears. The wind between the stairs, it was magic. When Gina came back a couple hours later, Rapunzel was fast asleep and snoring. It took several gentle kicks to wake her. What? Rapunzel sat up, her heavy silver hair even crazier with leaves and twigs. The stars had shifted since she'd passed out, the heavens whirling above her, unconcerned with sleep. Gina laughed softly. She'd already taken care of her small birds she had killed. They were nearly finished cooking on an improvised spit. There were even more herbs stuffed in them, and that plus what little fat they had snapped and sizzled and smelled delicious. Wow, you can do everything, Rapunzel said, with frank admiration and a little bit of drool. I said I lived in the woods with my mom. I mostly grow or catch whatever you eat. I tried to find you some mushrooms in case your thing about dead birds, including eating them, but it hasn't rained in a while. And anyway, the real good ones come later. But I guess that's not an issue. Rapunzel had already taken the stick with a smaller bird and began tearing into it. "You're gonna go if't this?" she said. No point wandering around at night and getting lost. It's not safe. Fire will keep away bears and wolves and other nighttime dangers. We'll rest and be off at the first light. Rapunzel considered this. It was the confidence with which Gina had spoken that moved her, not arrogance, just a simple assumption that it was obviously the right thing to do, and everyone else listening would have agreed, which was strange. Considering how Gina said no one took her seriously, and how it was hard being a young woman in the thug world. She sounded so very unsure of herself then, despite being well versed in particulars of the business, hunting of dinner, setting up camp. Where a look for their quarry, did people just reject and ignore her? After dinner, Gina banked the fire and threw the sticks they had used to cook and eat with into the woods so they wouldn't attract animals. The two sat up for a while, Rapunzel with her back against the tree, Gina watching the coals, her face illuminated dramatically. While she read stories and performed puppet shows, Rapunzel forcibly gave everyone different faces of her own, tried to imagine people differently from herself. Gothel had laughed when once a young girl, Rapunzel had painted a family scene, which the children with blue hair. How was she to know the limits of human features? She'd literally only seen her mother's black hair, her own silver hair and brown hair from the few times people had wandered into her field to view below her tower. Now that she had a chance to study another person, Rapunzel found herself trying not to see how different Gina was, shorter, darker hair and skin, but just how she was from an artist's perspective, lost in thought, not entirely relaxed. There was a flash on the fire deep in the clear brown eyes. "Hey, you got a twig something caught in your hair there," Gina said, breaking the silence, leaning over to take it out. "Don't touch my hair!" Rapunzel shrieked, scrabbling backward in the dirt. "Whoa, alright, crazy person," Gina said, pulling back, eyes wide. "I wasn't going to." "Do I look like the sort of girl who wants to come over and braid your hair or something?" "I'm sorry," Rapunzel said immediately, biting her lip to keep from crying. It's a long story." "I'll say it's long," Gina drawled, her eyes moving very specifically over the length of her braids. "Get it?" Rapunzel managed a weak smile. "This got something to do with the whole chickens thing?" Gina said. What? No. Why would hair have something to do with chickens or killing them?" Rapunzel said, forcing a laugh. "That's weird. Hair killing chickens?" Gina narrowed her eyes. "You said anything about hair killing chickens? I just meant the sort of childhood where your mom made you kill the farm animals without a good reason. Might also have a strange thing about it, like you being forced to grow your hair long, not letting anyone else touch it, putting weird symbols or jewelries on it. Like you were raised in a cult or something." No," Rapunzel said. "Sorry, I wasn't. I'm not." "Oh," Gina said carelessly, snuggling down into her cloak. "Then what is the story of your hair, anyway? It's such a strange color and so long." Rapunzel shrugged. "I was born with this color, and I never cut it." "Huh?" She waited for Gina to ask more, hoping and feared Gina would ask more. But all the other woman said was, "Must be a real pain to keep out of the way. I mean, it's pretty and all, but I'd probably cut it. Not all of it, maybe. My mom braid goes down to her knees and she undoes it. Maybe like that." Her words got slower and softer. They were replaced by the ends of the quiet breathing that suggested sleep. Rapunzel drifted off uncomfortably, new ideas making her soul itch, and they sprouted through her skin. Okay, so that was the second chapter. I'm probably gonna end it there for today. Thanks for watching this live. And if you enjoy this, just have notifications on. And I normally try to make a YouTube short saying that, like, hey, I'm gonna go live 30 minutes earlier, or if I know a lot in advance, I'll try to tell you what day I'm going live. It was just a hey, let's go live thing for today, so I didn't really do a YouTube short to announce it. So thanks for coming. Yeah, that's really it. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day. I love you 1000, and please stay safe.